Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and you join me back here in Sanctuary in Fallout 4 for the next part of Wasteland Botany. So we're going to talk about the fruit that's available in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. There's not quite as many as there is in Fallout New Vegas, but there is a few, and there are some kind of interesting ones into the mix here that we can talk about. So we'll start off with melons. So this is our lovely farm here at Sanctuary, where we've got pretty much all the crops you could want. But we've got the melons here. So melons, they're watermelons, and the scientific name is Citrullus lanatus. I'll put that on the screen. And they're a common crop, and you actually start off with a couple of them planted behind this house where the workbench is at the beginning of the game, so you can kind of pick them and replant them, which gives you a wee bit of a start for food for your settlement when all these freeloaders decide to come here. Okay, Strong, you carry on. There was a super mutant attack that I had to kind of deal with before recording. But melons, there's also gourd nearby, and I think it's important to notice one thing that I noticed actually on the wiki, which I did correct, is that that they thought that it was a cross between melon and a pumpkin, and that's why it grew from vines on the ground. But actually melons, watermelons especially, are in the same family as your gourds, your pumpkins, your squashes. So they grow in the same way. Cucumbers as well, they all grow in a similar fashion on these kind of vines along the ground, and then you've got leaves and then the fruit that develops, like most fruit, developing from flowers, and they grow on the ground like this. So the watermelons, they are sort of large fruits that have lots of seeds inside. In the game, they do count as food and water in survival mode in Fallout 4, and you get 10 hit points and 3 rads from eating them. But they're not used in any cooking or crafting recipes, but they are kind of handy because you get the food and the water at the same time, because watermelons, like some of the other relatives like cucumbers, tend to have quite a high water content in them, so they're quite useful for that. So it's a kind of, you know, covers both food and water just by consuming melons. So, you know, if that's what you want to eat, then you can carry on. I've got loads of them planted among the carrots and the potatoes and Jezebel. Yep, everybody's hanging out at the bar. I've got some ramen, but I've built a greenhouse here. This is my kind of first playthrough character, so Sanctuary is sort of chaos, but tried to be organised. I've got a Brahmin pen over there, and we've got a greenhouse. So the next part is mutfruit, and apparently the official pronunciation is mutfruit, not mutfruit. So that's been kind of agreed upon, and it's a mutated apple or crab apple, and it's found everywhere. Actually, you do find them. You find the mutfruits in pretty much all the games, from the classic Fallout 1, Fallout 2, New Vegas, Fallout 3, and also here in Fallout 4. So it does kind of count as food for the purpose of survival mode and hardcore mode, and you get 10 hit points and 2 rads in Fallout 4. In Fallout 3 and New Vegas you get 5 hit points and 2 rads instead, although that can be affected in New Vegas by your survival skill. It's also quite an efficient crop for your settlement, so compared to some of the other crops, so just say it produces 1 food, you need 1 food per settler ideally, whereas if you look at the corn, it produces 0.5 food, and the potatoes are 0.5 food as well. Apparently I have to hand out some more jobs to people for this, but we'll deal with that later. But you see the mutfruit plants provide 1 food on their own, so they do take up a bit of space, but not really much more than anything else, so they are sort of relatively efficient for providing food for your settlements. So it's a good way of doing that. And the mutfruit is part of a cooking recipe, so I'm going to go and see if I can remember what I did with my cooking station in this settlement. Oh, I do. Perfect. So the tasty Deathclaw omelette So this recipe is acquired from completing the side quest, The Devil's Due, which is the one at the Salem Museum of Witchcraft with the Deathclaw and the gunners that were collecting an egg to take to Wellingham and Diamond City, and to make a special order for a customer, and then they all got wiped out by the mother of said egg, because Deathclaws don't take kindly to people robbing their nests, understandably. You're not really alerted to this recipe, but if you take it back to Wellingham, you do get given the recipe for Deathclaw Wellingham, which is a separate recipe completely. But you do get this, and it's an interesting one because you can only really make this recipe once, and to do that you have to complete the quest and then steal the egg back from the Deathclaw nest, which does make the Deathclaw hostile, so be aware. But you can only get one pristine Deathclaw egg, which this recipe needs, so if you really want to make it, then you have to be prepared that it's a limited resource, interestingly. But you need a blood pack, you need 2 carrots, 2 mutfruits, the pristine Deathclaw egg and the purified water, and you make 5 of these. Again, they probably did that so that, because you only get one pristine Deathclaw egg to make the recipe. So you get hit points of 115. You get plus 50 maximum hit points for 2 hours, and you get health regeneration for the same amount of time. But you can only get 5 of them in total, so use them wisely if you decide to make these. But in order to do that, you do have to return the egg to the Deathclaw and then take it back, which is a wee bit mean, but there we go. So that's the food recipe that mutfruit are used in. There is other Deathclaw. I think you've got the standard Deathclaw omelette, which just needs a blood pack and a Deathclaw egg, but that's the only recipe that uses the pristine Deathclaw egg, and you only get one chance to make it. And then, I don't really care about that. Okay, so next up is drinks. So you can create a Dirty Wastelander, which needs a mutfruit, a Nuka-Cola and 2 whiskey. And it's definitely, that's a cocktail that you're making. And for this you get plus 3 strength and plus 1 charisma and minus 2 intelligence for 5 minutes. And it does have a 25% risk of alcohol addiction if you use it. So, be aware of that. But yeah, that's quite a nice one. I'm pretty sure I do have the official cookbook, the Fallout cookbook, but unfortunately, because of my sort of house situation, a lot of my stuff's in storage, and I'm pretty sure the book's there, but I do believe that this recipe is in that book to make your own, which is kind of interesting. So yep, that's a nice little cocktail that you can make for yourself. And you can also make your own Vim, which I don't know if that's in this or if it's at the... Listen, they've got all the turrets and whatever that they need at 10 Pines Bluff. If they can't handle themselves, then that's not my problem. But I'm going to move this up to where all the other stuff is, so I'm not wondering about looking for it. Yeah, those, oh, help defend so and so, help defend this settlement, they just get a bit excessive. Oh, there is a cookie. Never mind. I walked right past this one because I forgot that that's a thing. Never mind. Observation skills aren't exactly my strong point. Okay, no. I don't have access to that recipe. But if you do have Far Harbour, I don't know if Far Harbour has been properly completed on this file. I'll have to look into that. But if you have Far Harbour, you can use mutfruit to make your own Vim, which is a soda to rival Nuka-Cola that is very popular locally in Maine, and you get the recipe from the research terminal on the roof of the Vim Pop factory in Far Harbour. You need acid, corn, mutfruit and purified water in order to make it. So Vim, it's then just a bottle of Vim, so you get 30 hit points and plus 10 AP, and then you can also use it to craft some of the varieties of Vim like the Captain's Blend, but you do get the recipe to be able to make it yourself as well, which is interesting. And we do have a couple of really important utility recipes as well that use mutfruit, and this one I probably don't need to tell you about this one, but you need 3 corn, 3 mutfruit, 3 potatoes and a purified water, and that lets you make vegetable starch, which gives you 5 adhesive. So definitely if you're one for doing a lot of crafting of your weapons, your power armour, whatever, and you need adhesive, get all these crops in the ground, get your settlers working on it, and you can churn out an awful lot of adhesive, so all your crafting desires will be covered there. But yeah, this one's probably not new to anybody that's played Fallout 4. But there is one final recipe that we need to talk about, which you need the chemistry station for, and that is one of your syringer ammos, the syringes, which is the PAX syringe. So 2 mutfruit, a Nuka-Cola and steel, and that creates the PAX syringe. I really actually do think that the syringer's underutilised in this game, certainly by me. Something that I would like to look into trying out in another playthrough is using the syringer, because some of these things do seem to be very interesting. So you can craft this. So PAX is Latin for peace, and it pacifies. It basically has a chance to make the target non-violent for 30 seconds. As far as I can tell, if you land the hit, then it always works, but it's ineffective on robots and your Gen 1 and Gen 2 synths. And also if you attack the pacified creature, then they'll turn hostile again before the timer is up. So that's kind of an interesting one there. And then one, because silly me somehow managed to forget to put the most iconic fruit in the list of mutfruit. So I missed it when I was talking about the Fallout New Vegas ones last week, but mutfruit does exist in Fallout New Vegas, and you can use them as part of Cass's moonshine recipe. You also need yeast, maize and a fission battery, and you can make it at campfire or through dialogue with Cass, but you do need a survival skill of 75, and the moonshine gives you +2 charisma and strength for 4 minutes, -2 intelligence for 4 minutes, and +25 dehydration in hardcore mode, because alcohol does cause dehydration. That's what it does. That's why you get a hangover if you drink too much of it. It's generally dehydration that is the issue there, so worth keeping that in mind if you are playing in hardcore mode. It's also part of the recipe for the super stim pack, which requires a stim pack, a leather belt, a mutfruit and a Nuka-Cola, and a science skill of 90. And you can make yourself a super stim pack, so you get 60 hit points or 20 per second for 3 seconds if you're playing hardcore mode. Restored limb condition, but the debuff is -1 strength and agility for 2 minutes. So keep that in mind. And then finally, I can't believe I missed this because there's so much to talk about with the mutfruit, but anyway, so speaking of stim packs, there is some interesting cut content that I discovered involving Curie and the mutfruit. So Curie, if you haven't met her, she was the special Miss Nanny robot in the secret part of Vault 81, who basically continued to work on a panacea, a sort of cure for all diseases. And you had to go and get it to save the little kid that got bitten by the mole rats, but she then becomes a companion, and you can put Curie into a synth instead of her being a robot. That's something that she can ask. But there was something that she did where she created a new strain of the mutfruit called strain 17, and apparently the sugar compound that was in this fruit could be used to stimulate platelet production in the body to enhance the healing abilities and close wounds better than normal stim pack. If you don't know, platelets are the tiny little blood cells that form clots. So if you get a cut, the platelets all come and aggregate at that cut and basically create a barrier that's then strengthened but they're the first kind of line of defence for protecting and keeping all your blood on the inside of your body where it's supposed to be. So, you know, potentially something that could be quite useful for improving stim packs and their effectiveness. It could only be created inside a sterile environment though. So Curie's health pack would have given you 35 hit points and minus 300 rads when it was used, but it was cut from the game, unfortunately, which is a kind of a shame because it sounded like it would have been quite interesting, but that was something that Curie was supposed to do. So it's almost like after she left Vault 81, she would continue her medical research and then wasn't able to do so. So yeah, in fact, is that her there? I think that might be her there. Anyway, so for the next one, we need to go and pay a visit to my ghoul friends over at the Slog. So we're here at the Slog for the final fruit that's in Fallout 4, which is the tarberries. So you can see these purpley kind of aquatic plants that are in the swimming pool. So it's not really clear exactly what tarberries are, possibly some form of mutated cranberry, but they are aquatic and they grow in the water. They can't really be farmed, so you can't plant your own tarberry bog anywhere. It's only here at the Slog where the ghouls have managed to cultivate it in this old swimming pool. But you do find the wild variety in ponds dotted about the Commonwealth as well. Like all of the fruit, they do count as food, and you get 10 hit points and 2 rads like most of the raw plant-based food in Fallout 4, but they are used in a number of recipes. So you can see that, you know, the guys, oh, you've got a fancy t-shirt, what one's that? Captain Cosmos. Hi. You are welcome. No, you just go find something to do. I don't care. But yeah, so there is these little purpley kind of berries, and then the plants that grow into the water. So
seems to be growing well.
And I felt I was literally there. Oh Jesus! I was literally at Sanctuary Hills and killed most of the super mutants, but apparently that wasn't good enough. Okay, anyway, so there's a few recipes that the tarberries are used in. So the first one is under M for Mirelurk jerky. I have questions about this recipe, but anyway, you need an antifreeze bottle, Mirelurk meat ×2, and tarberry ×2. Don't drink or eat antifreeze. Just don't. It's very bad. It's very dangerous. Just FYI. But yeah, apparently we need that to make jerky. I guess it must have something in the drying process for jerky, which obviously is dried kind of meat. But anyway, you make this, and this recipe you get from Old Longfellow in Far Harbour, so it is one that was added by Far Harbour. So you get 35 hit points, you get 15 poison resistance for 30 minutes, and you also get +3 perception for 30 minutes, which is quite nice. So, you know, decent little thing, and obviously counts as food as well from the point of view of survival mode. Tarberries do also form part of some of the recipes in the food processor, which is the contraptions workshop, the machine that makes the pre-war food items. So tarberries are used in the fancy lid snack cakes as well. But on the chem side of things, there's a couple of interesting things to look at. Where's the chemistry station? There's the chemistry station. So first up, we've got right at the top of the list is the berry mentats. So we're using berries to make berry mentats, kind of makes sense. So you need a dose of mentats, antifreeze again, and 2 tarberries for that. And that gives you the berry mentats, which gives you +5 intelligence, and also the effect of highlighting living targets for 8 minutes. So kind of like there's the power armor HUD effect that you can add to your helmet, which also highlights living targets, similar to the perk that Boone gives you in Fallout New Vegas. It is a wee bit buggy, just to be aware, because sometimes, like the power armor effect, this effect can make friendly people and creatures turn hostile to you, so use with caution if you want to stay friends with certain groups of people. Just a little bit of sage advice there, because, you know, like all the Fallout games, sometimes we have silly little bugs that can sometimes make things interesting. And then syringe or ammo, we're back on that again. So you are using them for lock joint syringe. So this requires 2 tarberries, a stingwing barb, steel, lead and dirty water. And that makes the lock joint syringe, which gives you a chance to paralyse your target for 10 seconds, which makes them freeze and fall over. So lock joint is another name for tetanus, which is an infection that's acquired from injuries from rusty metal, and that's caused by the bacterium Clostridium tetani, which produces a toxin that causes the muscles to seize up, which is known as tetany. So, you know, you can see where they got the names from. Sometimes medicine is like that, and microbiology is like that, but they produce this toxin that causes the muscles to seize up, which is a rigid form of paralysis, essentially, whereas you can get paralysis where the muscles just won't contract at all. So that's kind of a different type of paralysis, but the rigid form where the muscles just tense up, and it can be made worse by stress, because I know we had a case in a dog. It's quite rare in dogs to get tetanus, but this dog had it, and they had to stop people going in to look at it, because anytime people went in, the dog would get a bit stressed and it would make the tetany worse, and it got quite distressing for the poor thing. It's a rare one, but it is something that, you know, not very nice. I'm very well vaccinated against tetanus, because you know, working with animals and the dangers inherent in working with animals and getting bitten and things like that. And I did have an incident a few years ago. In fact, it was during COVID, where I accidentally, a dental instrument slipped while I was doing the dental and went straight into my hand. So I had to go I get x-rays and antibiotics and a tetanus booster because of that, because I'd stabbed myself in the hand. So, you know, something to bear in mind, because it can be very serious. But the lock joint, it makes it useful because you can freeze your enemy, and that gives you a chance to potentially set them up to do more damage. So there you go. So that's one. And then the next one that we need to talk about is one from Fallout 3, and we're off to Point Lookout, so I'm going to switch games and I will see you over in Point Lookout in just a second. Okay, so we are here in Point Lookout, which to talk about the punga fruit. So this one is entirely fictional. There's not a real world kind of comparison for this particular item, but it is one that you do find some, even in Fallout 3, some merchants carry it once you have the Point Lookout expansion for Fallout 3, but you'll find it in a few places, but it comes from Point Lookout. So the punga fruit, it's based on the Buddha's hand fruit, which is a variety of citron called Citrus medica var sarcodactylus. Again, I'll put that on the screen. I know it's a bit of a mouthful. Sarcodactylus means flesh fingers, by the way. So, you know, an interesting choice of name there. But this plant does grow wild, so obviously a lot of the area of Point Lookout is a swamp, and it does seem to grow very well in that kind of swampy bog kind of land, and you'll find it everywhere as you walk around and as you explore. So the tribals at the Arkandov Cathedral, they have a refined version which looks a bit nicer. It's more bright green and doesn't look quite as mouldy and disgusting as the wild variety, but that does exist as well, and they do grant you a small amount of hit points, but the interesting thing about them is that they do scrub radiation from your body. The wild one removes 1 rad, while the refined one removes 2 rads. But if you have the Punga Power perk, then The wild one removes 5 rads and the refined one removes 15 rads. Which is potentially quite nice. So that's one of the interesting things, because in Fallout 3, other than sort of Radaway, there's really not a lot of things that actually remove radiation from you, but the punga fruit is one of them. But you can also give them to Marguerite and she'll make moonshine with them for you, if that's what you're interested in. There's not really much cooking in Fallout 3, but I think it's interesting to talk about the punga seeds. So when you arrive in Point Lookout and you go to the Calvert Mansion and you help Desmond, and then he sends you to go and get in with these tribals because he wants to find out what they want, then you can't get into the cathedral until you go to the Sacred Bog and get the seeds from the mother punga, which is, quite an impressive plant. To be honest, it's massive, it's very creepy looking, very alien looking, really, really interesting. The art style's pretty good for this. They're perfectly safe, honestly, except no, because they induce hallucinations and act as an effective anaesthetic, potentially a dissociative anaesthetic. So you do have quite the trip, and you might find that you've just got a tiny little bit of serious brain damage, because you might have had a lobotomy, just a little bit of lobotomy. So, be wary when people tell you to go and take seeds from mystical plants for no reason. Same thing, almost, a similar thing happens when you go to Oasis. And they make you drink the sap and then drag you in and leave you in front of Harold to it's quite funny. But yeah, so that's how the punga fruit work. But you should always be wary of people that tell you to go and do these kind of sacred trials and things like that, because sometimes things might not be what they seem. So that's everything for the fruit for Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. So next week we'll get on to the veggies. Still quite a lot more to cover, and we're continuing with the Wasteland biographies with the Legion. So I think the plan is on Tuesday we'll be talking about Vulpes and Kulta. I think he's very interesting, so that's going to be the plan. And then next Saturday we will pick up with the vegetables, and the video essay for this month is coming along. So just get a bit of dust or something in my eye here. So yeah, the video essay is coming along. I've been snooping around the Institute to kind of make sure I've got all my facts straight and everything. So hopefully that's going to be an interesting one, exploring the role of the Institute as villains and how effective they are in that role. So that should be interesting, and we'll see how that goes for the end of the week. And yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I'd, as always, love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you stumble across any weird or interesting little things in the game, definitely let me know. As I've said, the community posts for subscribers is available, so if you are subscribed to the channel, and if you've watched a few of my videos and you're not, then why not? But that is open to subscribers, so if there's anything interesting you want to talk about, anything that you think you'd like to see me talk about, definitely let me know. I'm always open to looking into interesting things that other people have discovered in the game, so definitely let me know, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.
Congrats. No, don't try and get up yet. You'll only hurt yourself.